Hello and welcome to another episode of State Champs eSports Atari 2600 edition. My name is Denver and today we are playing the classic game Breakout. And I am doing not so well with the classic game Breakout. In my defense, I will say that I played this game growing up as a child, but with the paddle controller. So using a PlayStation 4 controller is extremely difficult, to say the least. As always, I want to start by thanking our sponsors, Lawrence Technological University. Go to ltu.edu to find out more information about them. They're a great supporter of not only State Champs eSports, but State Champs High School Sports and State Champs RoboZone. Also have to give a big shout out to Army Michigan and of course Hungry Howie's Pizza. Do me a big favor and visit them today. Give them some support for supporting us. Alright, looks like I'm finally getting the hang of it here, folks. Now, as you can see, this in the late 70s, early 80s was the height of arcade game playing. Believe it or not, you see the realistic and lifelike action that you got today. Well, this is where it all started, folks. Well, technically, this is not where it all started, but the masterful game Pong, which is even more basic, which I would play, but Pong is a two-player game. And so I'm going to play Breakout because it's essentially using the same technology and strategy. Oh boy, I'm really stinking up the joint with this thing. Now obviously the goal, a game this simplistic, why did I move? I think you could figure it out just by looking at it. The goal is to break out of this wall. You just slowly chip away at the blocks until you break through. Oh, brother. There we go. I am not liking this PlayStation controller for Breakout. Now, the reason I keep missing is that if you hit the ball with your paddle while you're moving, it supposedly gives it a little English and can change the direction of the ball. But you know what? I'm gonna just play it simple here to get started and not go too crazy, because as you can see, the higher up you go in rows, the faster the ball will move, which is also a bit of a trademark from Pong, where the longer the volley goes, the faster the ball goes, obviously to make it a little bit more fun and exciting. Let's see if I can... Ooh, there we go. Now, if you're really good, you can form an opening through all the layers. Oh, shoot. Form an opening through all the layers and then get your ball to go on the top row and kind of bounce its way around and do a lot of the work for you. Whoa, that came in hot. Oh boy, not so good, not so good. All right, I'm gonna break out the notes here just to give you a little background on Breakout. As I mentioned, it was based on the game Pong, which was developed by Nolan Bushnell from Atari. He's actually the man who created the company. Little side note, he also created Chuck E. Cheese. Yes, that was those creepy robotic musicians were his brainchild. Apparently, from what I've read, he really wanted to work with Walt Disney, who famously had all of his robot presidents and other such mechanical delights. But anyway, that is a bit of a sidetrack there. Sorry about that, folks. Stay on target. That's what I used to always tell the guys that I would podcast with whenever they'd go off on tangents. Stay on target. From, of course, one of the great movies of all time, Star Wars. So Nolan Bushnell started Atari back in the early 70s when he saw a early version of a computer tennis game and basically redid it a little bit better for the Atari arcade game, which really became a huge hit and put Atari on the map. And it was the success of games like Pong and Breakout that led to the development of the 2600, which I've been celebrating these last several weeks on my nightly shows. Although shows might be a little bit of a stretch. It's just a glorified live stream of me playing my favorite games from the Atari 2600. Although I do try to drop a little knowledge on the games and the people that made them and the companies, because you have to remember, when I was a kid, I didn't know anything about who made the games or the companies. I just liked playing them. I was, what was I, 7, 8 years old at the time. So it's kind of fun for me now to go back through and learn about the behind the scenes of all the people in the games that I love playing. Ooh, that got a little heated there, didn't it? Bummer. Okay, well, dates. I'm not real great on dates, but I can tell you that Breakout came out in 1976, the arcade version anyway, and this version of the Atari port, the Atari 2600 port, I must correct myself, came out a couple years later, I believe in 1978. Yes. And the story behind the original arcade version of Breakout is actually pretty interesting. Nolan Bushnell, who essentially came up with at least the concept for Pong, he wanted to do a one-player version, which I think I mentioned at the top of the show. So he brought in Steve Jobs, who in turn brought in Steve Wozniak. And you might know those guys from a little company they started called Apple. Nolan Bushnell was trying to get the number of chips down from 150, 170, and he just felt that that was too many chips for a game, I suppose, to save costs. So he gave the job to Steve Jobs, because Jobs knew that his buddy Steve Wozniak could definitely get those chip sizes down. And I believe the final version came in around 40 chips, so even let's say generously 170 to 40, that's quite a drop. And interesting little side note, Atari paid Jobs $5,000 as a bonus for getting it down so low, yet Steve Jobs only paid Wozniak $350 because he told him that the original price, which was true, for doing the job was only $700. So pretty shady by Jobs, if you ask me. But in his defense, Wozniak in the long run did pretty well for himself, so I guess you can't complain too much. Karma, baby. Now, one last interesting Apple related side note. Steve Jobs did ask Nolan Bushnell to invest in the original Apple computer. I believe he was looking for $50,000, at least that's what I read. And of course, Nolan said no. For that $50,000, Jobs was reportedly willing to give him a third of the company. So could you just imagine getting a third of Apple? Holy moly. But Nolan Bushnell did not do too bad for himself, because in '77 he sold Atari to Warner Brothers for a cool, was it 28 million? So not too shabby. Unfortunately, about a year later, Nolan Bushnell was outed from Atari, so he was no longer part of the company that he created, although I guess that's what happens, or at least that's the risk that you take when you sell. Now, Atari did wind up being sold by Warner Brothers several years later, after kind of the video game industry went bust. But before they did that, I believe they had a few, or at least close to 2 billion in sales, which, I mean, for today that would be huge, let alone late 70s. Atari was, in fact, one of the fastest growing companies at the time in the world. So it just kind of shows you that they had, much like Apple did after they released the iPad and iPhone and iPod, they were kind of the hot company, tech company. Well, that was pretty much where Atari was several decades earlier. Oh boy, not having a good luck with this one. It is fun, and the simplicity of it, I have to say, is kind of meditative. You do have to really concentrate on that ball, but there's not a lot of sounds, not a lot of moving part, so to speak. So it is not a very frantic game, which I do like. A lot of Atari games I mean, they can almost border on annoying with all the crazy sound effects and. Ooh, okay, let's see, what do I got here? A few other little tidbits about Mr. Bushnell. He is supposedly going to be portrayed by Leonardo DiCaprio in a biopic. Now, this was several years ago when the announcement was made, so I have a sneaking suspicion that the project is probably dead, at least with DiCaprio's involvement. But that could have been very interesting. I've referenced it on previous episodes, but there is a great AMC television series called Halt and Catch Fire, which, while I don't think it's based on Atari or Steve Jobs, it definitely could kind of fill that space. It's about an 80s computer company and all of the different casts of characters involved. So if you love this kind of world, definitely give that show a watch. Halt and Catch Fire. I loved it. It was great. It got better and better each season. And if you've watched any previous episodes of this show, you know that I'm fond of the saying, easy to play, difficult to master. Well, that term was coined by Nolan Bushnell himself, and it is called the Bushnell Law. Oh, brother, this is ugly. Ugly. You would think that the most basic of game wouldn't be this difficult. I think this is the most basic game that I've played during this run of Atari 2600 games, and I am doing the worst that I have. Like that. I just, for some reason, just darted to the side there. I think it's just this controller must be super sensitive. Alright, I was gonna say really hunker down and focus. And let's see where that got me. Deal. Okay, so that was 11. I'm going to go with my philosophy of if I don't improve, I will pull the plug. And not off to a great start, so I've got to beat 11 blocks. Can I beat 11 blocks? Come on, people. This can't be that tricky. Okay, 12. All right, I did it. Oh. All right, well, at least I've improved over last game, so I can continue playing. As soon as I don't improve, I will call it a night. And get more of that up and down play going. Ah, shoot. It's a lot easier than trying to play it on these long side curves here. Okay, well, I did considerably better than last time. So I guess I'm not totally hopeless. Ooh, they got me on that one. All right, 38. I got to beat 38. Here we go. Let's give it a shot. See if I can keep my streak going. Now, I will say that the game that I probably like more than Breakout is Super Breakout, which is obviously the sequel. That came out a few years after this game, and it just had a lot more variety of gameplay and was a lot of fun. But I figured, you know what, let me give my respects and props to the OG Breakout. But Super Breakout is one of those rare sequels that I think did do just as well, if not better, than the original. Which at that time of the gaming industry was not difficult because they were increasing the quality very rapidly. So just an improvement in sound and color alone could be enough to win you over here. 31, okay, I just need a few more to keep going. Can I do it? 35, 36, 40. Oh, all right. Oh, I'm still in the same game. What about, oh, I spoke too soon. All right, if I can just break through to the top, then you can get that ball up there, and it kind of does a lot of the work for you. Bummer. Okay, 49. All right, I keep increasing. I guess when I'm not busy talking, I can play a lot better. Go figure. Or not. $49 is the number to beat, folks. Can I do it? Can I do it? I was just about to say, I think I'm finally got the hang of this game. Alright, I gotta really do some breaking out here if I'm gonna beat my 49 record. There we go, there we go, there we go. Man, so close. Was it 49 or 59? Let's go 59 since I'm so close. Oh, folks, it looks like that's all for tonight. This has been Denver for another episode of State Champs eSports Atari 2600 edition. Thanks for watching, and again, let me thank my sponsors, Lawrence Technological University, Army, Michigan, and Hungry Howie's Pizza. We'll see you next time.